Hi, Bob the Canadian here. We are going to talk about weather today, and we're going to talk about natural disasters. This is a great English lesson. I do know that this lesson could seem a little simple to you. Many of you learn about the weather in English very early on. So the lesson might be simple. So hopefully, as I talk about the weather, we have lots of questions. Again, if you look in the chat, you will see that there is a link. Let me just check something for a sec. Great English. Looks like everything is working. I love it when I start the lesson and everything is working. So again, Bob the Canadian here. Welcome to this English lesson. We're just waiting on, hopefully Todd pops in a moment, and Todd will take care of the chat. There is a link in the chat if you would like to ask questions. Again, only questions about the weather and about natural disasters. If you ask other questions, I won't be able to answer them this morning, but there is a live lesson tomorrow evening as well, 7:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But today we're going to talk about the weather. If you're new here, welcome. I know a few of you in the chat were mentioning that this was your first live lesson. That's very awesome. And if you're watching this on replay later, welcome as well. If you don't know who I am, I'm Bob the Canadian. I teach English on YouTube. But let's get started talking about the weather. The first kind of weather that we have really is we have the sun in the sky, and when we have a nice day where there's lots of sun, we say it's sunny. So S-U-N-N-Y, it's sunny. Actually, right now outside, it is a sunny day here. Actually, why don't I show you? I rarely ever turn the camera, but let's turn. You can see a little bit outside the window of my classroom here at school that it is a nice sunny morning here in Ontario. It's beautiful. Actually, I'm going to close the window because there's a big truck going by. There we go. But in English, we would say it's sunny. And it's totally sunny. There are no clouds in the sky right now. But stay with me on this lesson because I'm going to go over the simpler things first. Again, if you are just joining us, this is a lesson on the weather and natural disasters. I believe it was Vinicius last week that asked about natural disasters. I think it was Vinicius. I can't remember, but thank you. If it's not sunny, sometimes we have rain, and when there is rain coming down outside, we say it's raining. Notice the difference there. When it's sunny, we say it's sunny. When it's raining, we say it's raining. So it's a little bit different formation of the word. You can describe the day as being rainy. Sometimes we have a rainy day. But if you were to look outside and the sun was shining, you would say it's sunny. But if you were to look outside and there was rain coming down, you would say it's raining. It's raining outside. You can say it's rainy, but more often you would say it's raining. It's raining cats and dogs out there. A lot of you know that phrase, I think, right? It's raining cats and dogs. So again, if you have questions, ask them via the form. Here is a kind of weather that we have a lot in Canada. We have snow. When it is snowing outside, we say it's snowing. So as you see snow coming down, you would say it's snowing. It's not snowing right now. It won't snow in Canada where I live. It won't snow for a few more months. Usually November, we see a little bit of snow, and December we start to see snow. You can describe things as being snowy. So you can say, yesterday we had a really snowy day. But generally, when you're talking about the weather, you would say it's snowing or it is snowing outside. I love snow, by the way. And if you're wondering what I do in the winter when I'm making English lessons, if you're new and don't realize this, I just go out in the snow usually and I make the lesson. So Let's do 2 more and I'll take some questions. Another kind of weather is wind. So outside you might see that the wind is blowing and you would say it's windy. Okay, so you heard me say as well, the wind is blowing. So you can just say that. You could just say outside the wind is blowing. But generally we say it's windy. And bonus points if you know what this is. I'll let you think about it for 2 seconds. That is a kite. I'll put it in the chat. I just hit some keys here, just a sec. Sometimes I click things and I mess them up. There we go. So it is a kite. So when it is windy, you can fly a kite. And then we have some variations. I'll do this one. Sometimes it is cloudy. So you would say it's cloudy outside. We also use the word overcast. So when it's overcast, you have lots of clouds in the sky as well. So cloudy, it's a cloudy day. You could say it's cloudy outside. You could also say it's overcast today. A lot of times when it's overcast, it might rain. We're not sure, but sometimes it's overcast and it might rain that day. Anyways, again, hello to everyone who is watching. I'm Bob the Canadian. We're talking about the weather and natural disasters today. If this is your first time here, you should click the subscribe button. And if you guys want to give me a thumbs up if this lesson is helping you, that would be awesome. And if you don't know who I am, I'm Bob. I teach English on YouTube. You're learning English right now. So many of you, this was review, but I'm going to jump over into the questions in a sec. Let me just clear up some stuff for a minute. So we have a question here. Oh, I think I deleted one. There was a question about cyclones and typhoons. I'll get to that in a little bit. Let's see here. Sebastian wants to know the kinds of clouds. So I don't know all the kinds of clouds, but I know there are cumulus clouds. That's one of the ones that I know. But there are different English words for clouds, and I'm not a cloud expert, so I won't be able to answer that. Let's go to the next one. Papichulo says, "Hi Bob, it is raining right now in Honduras. What can you mention about, or what can you say about tornadoes? Do you have a lot of tornadoes in Canada?" So we'll get to tornadoes in a little bit in the lesson. Tomato. I almost said tomato. A tomato is a red fruit or vegetable, people argue, but a tornado is a funnel of wind. But we'll talk about tornadoes in a little bit, and we are not going to talk about tomatoes today. Let me just see. Chirong says, "Are you snowed under?" So snowed under is an idiom that means you have a lot of work to do. When it snows a lot, the snow builds up and you can literally in the winter be snowed under. But when we talk about being busy in life, you can also say, "I have so much work to do, I'm snowed under." So that's a good one. Let me do one more. Maria says, "What is the difference between foggy and hazy?" So fog generally, in Canada at least, happens in the early morning. A lot of times when we wake up in the spring and fall, there is fog. So fog is like mist or water vapor in the air. But haze is a little more like on a hot day, you might see some haze. Like the air is so humid that it seems hazy out. It's not a great explanation, but that's the difference between the two. Let's get back to it. Sometimes, so we're talking a little bit more about specific kinds of weather. I tried to use a lot of the wording that they would use in the weather forecast. So every morning I like to read the weather forecast. The forecast is the prediction of what the weather will be like that day. And sometimes they will say it's going to be partly cloudy. So partly cloudy, if you can see in this picture, there are some clouds, but you can also see the blue sky. So on a partly cloudy day, you will have some clouds in the sky and you will have some sunshine. So it will be partly sunny or partly cloudy. So that's Those are nice days, by the way. I like days when it's partly cloudy. Not sure. They'll also sometimes say, instead of rain, that we're expecting showers, okay? So you know already that a shower is something that you use in a house to clean yourself, but we also use the word showers to describe rainfall. So when you read a weather forecast, sometimes it will say that there's a possibility of showers that day. And we can also say rain showers if you want, showers or rain showers. Hello again to everyone who's watching. Hello to everyone in the chat. It is really nice to see all of you here. Super fun to be doing a Friday morning live lesson again. Just a couple pointers. If you have trouble understanding me right now, if you watch tomorrow, there will be subtitles on this video in English that might help you. So always think about, if there's parts where you don't understand, come back tomorrow and turn the subtitles on, and that might help you. So we talked about the forecast. So again, the forecast is the prediction of what the weather will be like. This is actually today's forecast. I will try to zoom in a bit here. Let's put it as close as we can. So this is the forecast for Friday, August 2nd. And you can see that it says 28 degrees Celsius. So we see the temperature, and you can see sunny. The evening or night, it's going to be 18 degrees tonight, and it will be clear. So there will be no clouds this evening. Next Tuesday, August 6th, you can see the forecast is that it's going to be 25 degrees Celsius, but there is a 60% chance of showers. So remember, we just looked at the word showers. Showers. So next week, Tuesday, there is a 60% chance. That means that there's a possibility that it might rain next Tuesday. And then the night, we have a low of 18 degrees Celsius and still a 60% chance of showers. So in the forecast, they try to let you know what's coming. And you also saw in the forecast the high and the low of the temperature. So in the forecast as well, they will tell you what the temperature is. So here you see that they're predicting a high of 25 and a low in the evening of 18. So 25 Celsius, 18 Celsius. Some of you might use Fahrenheit. Some of you may be in countries where you use Fahrenheit. But in Canada, we use Celsius. So here we have Celsius. I was going to say something else about this. Oh, I was going to say, so I lost my train of thought. I should teach you what train of thought is. So your train of thought is like the thoughts that you're having in your mind, and my train of thought just went off the track there. So some of you might use Fahrenheit. That's what I was going to say. Let me check for questions again, folks. Let's see here. So there are questions about hurricanes and typhoons and cyclones, and I'm going to talk about those later. So please just bear with me here. Let's see here. Vladimir says, hi Bob, what do you call a cold, strong, heavy rain? We would simply call it a downpour, or we would say it's pouring. We don't have a description for a cold, strong rain. Just a strong rain, you would just say it's pouring buckets, or it's coming down like crazy. That's another way to describe rain. You say it's coming down like crazy. Let's see here. Saeed says, I'll take Saeed's question. Do you have hurricanes in Canada? Not really. By the time hurricanes get to Canada, they're usually quite weak, and they're simply called a storm, Saeed. So we don't really have hurricanes in Canada. Let's see here. Next question is, Sarayo says, please could you explain to us weather disasters before appearing? So explain the weather when there is a rainbow. So a rainbow is a colorful arc in the sky. And we usually have a rainbow if it's raining and if it's sunny at the same time, then you will see a rainbow. So rainbows are really, really nice. You know what a rainbow is, right? I'm not going to draw one, but a rainbow is an arc in the sky that has all the different colors in it. So rainbows are very, very cool. Let's see here. Miguel says, come down. Can we use it with rain? We don't need to say the word rain. Oh, yes, you could just say it's really coming down outside. So when it's pouring rain, when the rain is coming down, you don't even need to say rain. You could just say, oh, it's really coming down outside today. Like it's coming down like crazy out there. So you don't even need to say rain. If I was to say to Todd the Canadian, oh, if you're going outside, wear a jacket, it's really coming down outside, he would know that it's raining for sure. Let's see here. Next question. Miguel says, can you talk about hail? Yes, I'll talk about hail in a little bit. Hail is frozen rain. It's very hard and it damages things, but we'll talk about hail in a little bit. Let's see here. Next question. So the question from Lolly is, can you use gloomy and overcast as synonyms? Do they mean the same thing? Not really. We don't often say that it's gloomy outside. We usually say it's overcast. Sometimes we just say the sky is really dark, but we would not use the word gloomy to describe weather. So let's see here. Mohammed says, when the winter comes, what will happen in Canada? Well, number one, we stay inside more. And number two, we drive a lot more slowly. But generally, life goes on when the snow comes, when winter comes, unless it is really, really, really cold. So if it's below minus 20, minus 25 Celsius, sometimes we don't go to work. But generally, we just wear more clothes. We wear a winter hat. And Mohammed, if you keep watching, eventually you'll see everything that I wear when winter comes. Let's see. So if I don't get to your question, I'll probably end up covering it. This is something, because I'm a farmer, I use a lot, and that's the radar. So I live right here, about right here. I live between Lake Erie and Lake Ontario. And when you go on the internet, you can look at the radar. And if you look down here, this is in the United States, you can see they have some rain. You can use the radar to see if a storm is coming towards you. Usually in my part of Ontario, the storms start in the state of Michigan and they move across, and then sometimes the storm will hit us. So sometimes we look at the radar. If the weather forecast says 60% chance of rain today or 80% chance of rain today, we'll look at the radar to see how quickly the rain might come or how quickly the rain is coming. So we use the radar to see. Can you guys use radar in your countries? Can you go on the internet and you can look at a map and see on the radar if a storm is coming? I think most people can do that. Just a sec, I have to find my water. So we have something in Canada, and a lot of you in southern parts of the world have this as well, called the humidity. So humidity is the amount of moisture or water that's in the air. When it is really humid, it is usually the day feels warmer than it is. So if you're in a place where it's 30 degrees Celsius and there's zero humidity, it doesn't feel as warm if you're somewhere where it's 30 degrees Celsius and there's lots of humidity. So here you can see in Canada, we have something called the humidex. And the humidex is how hot it really feels. So you can see here, temperature 25, humidity, I think it says 66, but here it says, because there is a lot of humidity, because there's a lot of water vapor or moisture in the air, it's going to feel like 32 degrees. The part of Ontario, Canada, where I live has lots of humidity in the summer. Because we live close to two big lakes, we have lots of humidity. So let's see here. Oh yeah, everything's working. People in the chat are saying nice things about me. Thank you very much. Abraham says, Bob, you're awesome. We love you. Thank you very much. And Abdul says hello. Thanks, guys. Some of you asked about fog. Generally for me, fog happens in the early morning in the part of Canada where I live. And fog is, humidity is moisture in the air. Fog is so much humidity in the air that you can see it. So on a foggy day, it is dangerous to drive. So notice we call it fog, but we describe the day as saying it's foggy. On a foggy day, there's lots of water vapor, water moisture in the air. Sorry, you don't say water moisture. Lots of water vapor, there's lots of moisture in the air. And so it makes it difficult to see. In Canada, we usually drive with our lights on when it's foggy, just so it makes it a little easier for people to see. Let's see what's next. Sorry, Bob the Canadian's losing track of things today. Here we go. Nathan is asking, Dear Teacher Bob, could you explain to us the word drizzle and also the action of it? So a drizzle is a very, very light rain. Sometimes people say it's misting. Sometimes people say it's drizzling. And I actually have a sheet for that in a little bit. Let's see. Next one is, what do you say when it is cloudy? Oh, this is from Saeed. What do you say when it's cloudy and the sun shines? So we would say mainly sunny or partly cloudy. Those are the two ways. So mainly sunny or partly cloudy, depending on what there is more of. So if it is very sunny and there are just a few clouds, you would say, oh, it's mainly sunny. But if it is mostly cloudy and a little bit of sun, you would say partly cloudy. Let's see. Helen wants to know, do you have typhoons in the summer like in our Pacific region? I do not. In Canada, we do not have hurricanes or cyclones or typhoons. Usually the hurricanes, they're called hurricanes in the southern US, they usually hit the United States, and then the storm kind of dissipates before it gets to Canada. So we don't have that kind of crazy weather like you guys do. So Talis says, hi Bob, could you explain the expression to rain on someone's parade? Thank you. So sometimes in life you do something that's really, really exciting. Maybe you get a brand new car, and then your brother says, that car's a piece of junk. So you would say that your brother, because he is saying something negative, is raining on your parade. So that's a great phrase. Sometimes people do something that's exciting, and then someone has to say something negative about it, and then we describe that as that they are raining on your parade. So someone asked about hail. So hail is when big chunks of ice fall out of the sky. In Canada, we do have hail sometimes, but you can see here, this is a typical hail. So you have little hailstones. Hail is very, very dangerous. Hail damages crops, so it damages plants in the field. Hail can damage vehicles if the hailstones get too big. If the pellets, we also call them pellets, get too big, they can dent the car. Let me show you. So if this is the car, and if this hits the car and it dents the car. So sometimes hail will put dents into cars. It's not very nice. We don't have hail very often in the part of Canada where I live, but we do have hail. In fact, one time when I was a kid, a long time ago, we had hail where the hail was almost the size of a golf ball. That's how big the hail was. It was really, really damaging. A lot of cars were damaged in that hailstorm. So yes, golf ball. The hail was the size of a golf ball. So it was really, really big. We also have, when it's the beginning of winter or towards the end of winter, we sometimes have freezing rain. So freezing rain is very dangerous because the rain comes down as water, but as it gets close to the ground or when it hits the ground, it freezes. and everything gets a coating of really, really slippery ice on it. Everything gets a coating of ice. So freezing rain is very common in Canada. In fact, when you are driving, freezing rain is more dangerous than snow. Most Canadians are really good at driving in the snow. We usually have special tires on our cars called snow tires, but it is very hard to drive on ice. So when we have freezing rain, a lot of times the roads are covered in ice, and it's very, very slippery and very, very dangerous. So freezing rain is not good. Let's see here. Another question this is from Fatima. Fatima says, in Sao Paulo, Brazil, it's cold in the morning and will be hot in the afternoon. There are 2 seasons in the same day. How can you say that in English? So we don't have a specific word for that in English, but that sounds very interesting. So it's very hot in the morning or in the daytime, and very cool in the evening. So that's so you must sleep good then. In Canada, we like it when it's cold at night because it's easier to sleep. Let me get the next question. I think I did this one already. Here we go. So Papi Chulo says, Bob, there's something I don't quite understand. Could you explain the wind chill factor? So the wind chill factor is, so if it is -10 and we have a wind chill factor of -15, it means that the wind will always make it feel colder in the winter than it is. So if we have a day where if you stand where there's no wind, it's -10, and they say with the wind chill factor, it's -15. It means if you stand in the wind, it will feel like -15. So you really have to come and experience a winter, and you'll get a sense of it. Venetia says, hi, Bob. It was not me that suggested this topic. It might have been Beryl Wilson, actually, then. Thanks to someone who suggested it. It's a great topic, by the way. Thanks for remembering me. Yeah, I remember some of the names, but it's getting harder and harder to remember the names, especially when there's, does that say 534 people watching? Hi. Hi, everyone who's watching. We're doing a lesson today on the weather and natural disasters. I'm Bob the Canadian. I teach English. You should subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel yet. So anyways, we're midway through. I'm just doing a few more questions. I have a lot of questions in the queue right now, people, so it is going to be hard to answer all of them. So here we go. Louise says, good morning, Bob. The forecast today is the temperature will reach 30 Celsius. Sunny day here in Sao Paulo. Detail, we are in the middle of winter. So in your winter, it hits 30 degrees. By the way, that's another way to say it. It's going to hit 30 degrees today. That's how you describe the high of the day. So not all of you will know what dew is. You have to live in a fairly damp or wet part of the world, but we have dew every morning. So early in the morning, dew will form. Dew is the small droplets of water that form early in the morning. And dew is something where when you walk in the grass early in the morning, your shoes get wet. So we have dew. And then in the winter, we have frost. So I don't know if you've experienced frost, but sometimes when we get up in the fall and in the spring, and sometimes in the winter, we have frost. And what frost is the dew freezes. And it's very, very beautiful because the grass will be white. There will be just a covering of dew, but it's cold enough that the dew freezes and you end up with frost. And sometimes you have frost on your windows as well, just a layer of white ice. And it's very, very cool. I'm going to talk a little bit more about rain. We have thunder and we have lightning. So, of course, lightning is the bright electrical flash in the sky. When you see lightning at night, it's really cool. Sometimes lightning lights up the sky. Notice it's lightning. And we have thunder, which happens just a split second afterwards. In English, when we say split second, it means like less than a second sometimes. So we have thunder and lightning, and thunder goes boom. Like, do you want me to make the sound of thunder? It's like boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. That's my impression of thunder. So you have a flash of lightning, and then boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom, bada boom. Sometimes kids are afraid of thunder because sometimes you have a thunderstorm at night, and it can be quite loud when you have a thunderstorm. Let me just check questions again. It says, Elias says, I'm clicking the wrong thing again. Elias says, do you have strong storms in your local town? We have strong thunderstorms, and we have strong wind storms. So you can have a storm where it's just wind, and we have strong snowstorms. So we don't have hurricane type storms though, but sometimes we get winds that are where the wind speed is so high it is quite damaging. So we do have those kinds of storms. Sridevi says, from India, says, hello, Mr. Bob. What is the difference between the atmosphere and weather? So the atmosphere is just the thin layer of air around the earth. We talked about the atmosphere in last week's lesson. But the weather is things like rain and snow and sunshine. It's what the world is doing outside when you go outside. So slight difference. Let's do one more question and we'll get back to the lesson. Copy and paste. This one's not about the weather. But Heba says, thank you, Bob, for everything. I've learned a lot from you. You're welcome, Heba. Sorry, I shouldn't have... here's a great question. Henry High says, Bob, what's the magnitude scale of earthquakes in Canada? And are tremors the same as a quake? Yes, so tremors and earthquakes, somewhat the same. We usually say earthquake. And you know what? Canada rarely has earthquakes. In my life, there have been 2 earthquakes, and they are very, very minor, very, very small earthquakes. We would actually describe them as there were a few tremors. So we would use the word tremor. One happened when I was a kid, and my bed moved a little bit for about 3 seconds. And then another one happened a few years ago where everyone just felt the world went like this, and then it was over. So very, very minor, very, very small earthquakes in Canada. Let's see here. Arash says, hi, Bob. How can I speak about the weather change? Could you please mention some useful verbs? I use almost always the verb become. Well, you would use the verb become a lot. The world is becoming warmer. The weather is becoming more extreme. We are having more natural disasters. So you are using the right word to talk about the change in weather. That would definitely work. Let's see here. Do one more question and we'll go back. Bobby says, do you often listen to the rain? Yes. Jen and I love rain in the summer because we grow flowers on the farm, and when it rains, the flowers get water. So we often, during a rainstorm, will open our garage door. A garage is the part of the house where you park your car. We'll open our garage door and we'll watch the rain and we'll listen to the rain. We love that. So different kinds of rain though. Before it really starts raining, in Canada, this is different than other parts of the world, but we say it's spitting. I don't think they say this in Britain. I think they might say this in Scotland. But when it's spitting, it's not quite raining yet. So you just feel like you feel a drop, and then a little while later you feel a drop of rain, and then you feel another drop. We would describe that as it's spitting outside. And do you know what spitting is? Spitting is when you're like, when you spit out of your mouth. That's what spitting is. But we use spitting to describe an early rainfall. And we talked about this a little earlier. Drizzle, or it's drizzling. When it's drizzling outside, it's a very fine rain, very tiny, tiny, tiny raindrops. If you walk outside when it's drizzling, you don't really get wet. You get a little bit wet, but when it's drizzling, it's very, very, very tiny, tiny raindrops. I think in some countries they say it's misting outside, but we would describe a very fine raindrops, small raindrops as drizzling. And then we have light showers or showers. If we're having a light shower outside, you almost can walk outside and like you could get from a building to your car during a light drizzle, or sorry, a light shower, and you would only get a little bit wet. You'd get wet, but it wouldn't be bad. When we have light showers, you almost need an umbrella, but not if you're just outside for a little bit. You could run from a building to your car during a light shower and you wouldn't get very wet. Let's see here. Downpour, or it's pouring. So when this happens, you need an umbrella. When this happens, if you are outside for a little bit, you will get very, very wet. But definitely during a downpour or when it's pouring outside, you would get very, very wet. This is where you would say it's raining cats and dogs. Or you would say it's really coming down out there. Or you would say, what would be another way to say it? That would be the best three, I think, to just say it's a real downpour, or it's pouring, or it's raining cats and dogs. Let me see here. So Sir Sa says, in Baghdad, the temperature is 43 Celsius right now. It is sunny too much. And if I don't mind, we would like to borrow some clouds from Canada. I would send some, Sir Sa, if I could. That would be really, really nice. But yes. Nathan from Brazil has a question here. Nathan from Brazil says, hi Bob, I'd like to know what is the coldest weather you have ever been in, and have a good day. So the coldest weather I have been in is minus 38 Celsius, minus 37. I was living in Quebec City. The province of Quebec in Canada is colder than the province of Ontario, and it was below minus 30. It's actually dangerous to be outside when it's that cold, because your skin can freeze. You get something called frostbite. So frostbite is when your skin freezes. So when it gets very, very cold, you don't want to be outside too much. So that's the coldest. I think it was minus 38 degrees Celsius. So Arlie says, does every place in Canada have underground places, and are those open all year? So in cities like Ottawa, where they're really far north and they have really cold winters, there are lots of ways to get around the city underground. Especially if you're at a university, there are tunnels and walkways underground everywhere, so that if the weather is far too cold, you can still get around even in spite of that. Let's see here. Kim says, what's the difference between muggy and sultry? So we don't use the word sultry, but it would mean the same thing. When it's muggy, it's high humidity. Humidity. So on a muggy day, it means there's a lot of humidity in the air. That's a great word though. Thanks, Meg. Who was that asked that? Kim. Thanks, Kim. I don't have that in my lesson, but we describe a day where there's lots of humidity as being very muggy. It's a muggy day outside today. That was great. I'm glad you brought that up. That's awesome. We talked about thunderstorms. So thunderstorms don't always have rain. So you can have a thunderstorm where there's lots of lightning and there's lots of thunder and there's no rain. That's very common in Canada. It's very disappointing in the summer when we need rain, when the ground is dry and the plants need rain. Sometimes a thunderstorm will go by and no rain will come from it. But we do have thunderstorms where it does rain. So a thunderstorm obviously is very loud. And I prefer thunderstorms where we have lots of rain come down as well. It's very, very nice. Sometimes in the winter we have what's called a blizzard. This is a fun word, blizzard. A blizzard is when it snows so much that things start to fill in. So it's hard to keep the roads clean during a blizzard. There's so much snow that they can't keep the roads clean. In the winter in Canada, trucks remove the snow from the roads so we can drive. Usually a blizzard lasts more than one day, and it is an extreme amount of snowfall during that time. So sometimes even people will shovel snow off the roof of their house because snow is heavy. So during a blizzard, you can see here, there's just snow everywhere. I have been through one blizzard in my life. Well, maybe two, but in 1977, the blizzard of 1977, I was 7 years old and there was so much snow, we didn't go to school for 4 days. I loved it. It was so cool. And there was so much snow. It was just a ton of snow. Let me do a few more questions here. Let's see here. The rain is... I promise not to mumble. So I will try not to mumble. Let me just clean up my questions here so I can see what the next question is. Luis from Brazil says, Bob, here in Brazil, due to the weather, at Christmas, Santa Claus needs to come with a t-shirt, short, and sandals, no beard, and with a surfboard. Yeah, because I guess you have Christmas in the middle of your summer. Next question is from Eric. Do you in Canada sometimes have sandstorms or dust storms, which usually happen in the United Arab Emirates? And sometimes does it last for days? We do not have sandstorms and we do not have dust storms in the part of Canada where I live. In Western Canada, sometimes when there is a drought, when it doesn't rain for a long time, they will have dust storms, small ones. We don't have anything like what you have in the United Arab Emirates. We don't have big sandstorms that fill our cities with sand. We do not see that here. We don't have any desert. We don't have any large sandy areas. But if it doesn't rain for a very long time, in Western Canada, it can dry up, and they do have small dust storms, but nothing like what you're talking about, Eric. Nothing huge like that. Gabo says, hello, Bob. Have you ever gotten frostbite? No, I haven't. So frostbite is, again, when your skin freezes. And the skin, when it freezes, sometimes the skin dies and you lose that little piece of skin. So it's good to wear gloves on your hands, mittens, winter hat. Usually you want to make sure that your nose and your ears and your fingers, that's where people usually get frostbite first, are covered somehow. Let me do two more questions. Katerina says, hi, Bob. Have you noticed any climate change in your area lately? So not lately, but over time, we are noticing that our last frost date in the spring is earlier and earlier. And we're noticing that our first frost date in the fall is a day or two later than it was 10 years ago. So things are definitely getting a little bit warmer. Daniel has a great question. Daniel the Danish says, hi, Bob, the Canadian. What is the difference in the pronunciation between weather and weather? They are pronounced exactly the same way. So I'll use weather in a sentence. If you say weather or weather, people won't know whether you're saying weather or weather. Did you get that? If you say weather or weather, people won't know whether you're saying weather or weather. That's a little tongue twister for you guys to practice. One more question and we'll go on with the lesson. Luis says, Bob, here in Brazil, we don't have earthquakes because the country is over only one full tectonic plate. So earthquakes are caused, that's a great piece of information, Louise. Tectonic plates are the big plates on the earth they can move against each other and they can move on top of each other. And when the plates move, that's what causes an earthquake. What Louise is saying, that in Brazil, they are on one tectonic plate, so it can move a little bit, but it's probably very gentle and it's not hitting another tectonic plate. Okay, let's move on a little bit. This question came up earlier, and I am not a weather expert, but what I will tell you is that a hurricane or a typhoon or a cyclone are all the same thing. It just depends what part of the world you live in. So a hurricane in the southern United States and in the Caribbean, oftentimes a hurricane, which is a large storm that forms above the Atlantic Ocean, or any ocean, but a storm that forms above the ocean, and then it makes landfall or it hits land. So we have many hurricanes come through in the southern United States. Florida, the state of Florida, often gets hit by hurricanes. And then if you are from a different part of the world, you either call it a typhoon. My friend Now, who just visited me from China, said that his home city was getting hit by a typhoon right now. And then also if you are from a part of the world other than the southern US, you might call it a cyclone. So we have hurricanes, typhoons, and cyclones. They are all large storms that form over the ocean. Usually when, I'm not a meteorologist. A meteorologist is a person who knows a lot about weather. Excuse me. I'm not a meteorologist, but a storm that forms over the ocean, it's either when warm air hits cold water or when cold water hits, or when warm water hits cold air. You guys will need to look that up. But it is a large storm that forms over the ocean and then makes landfall. Let's see here. Venetia says, hi Bob, sprinkles and spitting, do they have the same meaning? So we wouldn't say sprinkles, but we might say it's sprinkling. So, and yes, I think I spelled that wrong, folks. It's sprinkling. We might say it's sprinkling outside, and we might say it's drizzling. So they would have very similar meanings. Let's see here. Lolly says, does global warming affect your flower crop? So because Canada is already a fairly mild, we have fairly mild temperatures, global warming is not affecting us the same way as other countries. It makes our summers a little bit warmer, but that actually is not a problem yet because our summers aren't nearly as warm as the rest of the world. So for instance, someone mentioned that it's going to be 43 degrees where they are today. In Canada, the warmest it gets in the summer is 28 or 29 degrees on a normal day. And then some days it might go up to 30 or 35 degrees. So as it gets warmer, it has not affected us yet. But we have seen some extreme weather in our part of the world. Let's see. Luis has some information here. Luis says, we don't have hurricanes like in the US because the South Atlantic is much more calm than the North. Yeah, I think the weather in the Atlantic goes a certain direction. So I think that you catch things after they have died down a little bit. Let's talk a little bit more though about weather. So we also, in this part of Canada, we do not have a lot of tornadoes. We also call them twisters. But in the middle of the United States, they have a lot of tornadoes. They actually have a part of the United States called Tornado Alley, where they have many tornadoes in the summer. But a tornado is a large spinning funnel that touches down. It comes out of the cloud and touches down, and then it causes a lot of destruction. So we do have tornadoes in this part of Canada, but they are they're usually fairly short and they're not very big, but they do damage things. There was a tornado in a city close to me about 20 years ago that destroyed many buildings, but they're rare in this part of Ontario. If it rains too much, you have a flood. So a flood is when there's just water in a city or town or an area where there's normally not water. So you can see here the street is flooding. So there is a lot of flooding here. The difference between a flood and flooding is pretty minor. So you have a flood and water causes flooding. That's the difference. It can also cause a flood. So here you have lots and lots of water in the city. Floods cause a lot of damage. We do have some floods where I live in Canada, but usually they're rare, and usually it's just close to flooding happens to houses that are close to rivers. So sometimes our rivers the waters will rise and the rivers will flood. So we don't often build houses close to rivers in Canada. We're into natural disasters, by the way. I don't know if you noticed that. I should back up a bit. So natural disasters are when nature is very violent, or when things in nature happen that affect people, either by killing people or hurting people or destroying property. So hurricanes, typhoons, and cyclones have very high winds, and they can be very damaging, and they can be very dangerous. Flooding also, sometimes flooding is very extreme, and it damages a lot of homes, and it can be dangerous for people as well because there is a higher chance of drowning. Tornadoes obviously are very, very dangerous because they can easily destroy buildings. The winds in a tornado are so high they can rip a building apart, and also very, very dangerous for people. And then we have earthquakes. So earthquakes, again, the technical description is when two tectonic plates rub against each other. So an earthquake is when the earth moves. Let me simulate an earthquake for you. So that's what an earthquake would look like if it happened on camera. Earthquakes are very dangerous because if they destroy buildings quickly, and if you are in a building when there's an earthquake, the building can collapse on you, or the building can fall on you. So earthquakes are very, very dangerous. In the chat, Abdullah Raham says, how do we protect ourselves from lightning? Don't go under a tree when there is a lightning storm or when there is lightning. Trees get hit by lightning very quickly. Lightning tends to hit the highest place. So a lot of times when there is a storm, people think, oh, I'll go under a tree. Don't go under a tree when there is lightning. You should go inside. And if you can't go inside, you should get as low as possible to the ground. We don't have tsunamis in Canada, but a tsunami occurs when there is an earthquake in the ocean, and it causes a gigantic wave to hit the land. So a tsunami is just a big, huge wave of water that hits land, and it will flood or inundate an entire coastal city or coastal region. So a tsunami is very, very dangerous because they come quite quickly. Usually there will be a warning, but sometimes there isn't. Some of the most recent natural disasters that have been extremely destructive have been tsunamis. There was one in Japan, and then there was one in Southeast Asia a few years ago as well. So tsunamis are very dangerous. We also have volcanoes. So this is a volcano, and we have volcanic eruptions. Notice the difference in pronunciation. This is a volcano, but we have volcanic eruptions when the volcano erupts. There are many active volcanoes in the world. When a volcano erupts, there's lots of lava and there's lots of ash. Lava and ash. So lava is molten rock. It's this glowing hot rock. So lava comes out and then you have lots of ash and smoke. So volcanoes are dangerous, but we usually don't live too close to volcanoes. Volcanoes as a natural disaster are somewhat easy to avoid because if you live by a volcano, that's just not a good idea. So we also in Canada, probably the biggest natural disaster that we have in Canada would be forest fires. So a forest fire or a wildfire is when an entire forest is on fire. So in Western Canada, we have large forests in the provinces of British Columbia and Alberta. And we have, every year there are forest fires, and then they do try to control them. And then in the United States as well, there are a lot of forest fires. Just a lot of forest fires. Let's see here. Sarayo has a question. The question is, Sarayo says, what weather do you like the most, dear Bob? That's interesting to us. I love a good snowstorm, and I love a good rainstorm. So either, I would say snow is number one, Sarayo. I think I just like, especially if school is canceled because of the snow, I really, really like snowstorms. So that's a great question. There are too many questions for me to finish answering, people, so I'm going to pick a few and say and answer those. Actually, I have one more sheet for my lesson. The last natural disaster, this word can be hard to pronounce, but this is drought. Drought. So you can see here, drought is a lack of rainfall. When you have a drought, it means that it has not rained for a very long time, and plants begin to die because they don't have enough water. We don't have drought in Canada very often, but sometimes we do. Sometimes in our large farming areas of the country, we will have a small drought, but enough of a drought that the crops don't grow very well, the plants don't grow very well. There are parts of the world that have even more extreme drought than Canada, but drought is a natural disaster that's becoming more of a problem in the world. I'm going to go through a few questions just to wrap this up, everyone. By the way, we're almost done. If you are having trouble understanding me, don't forget that tomorrow there will be subtitles down here. So you can come back tomorrow and click the CC button, and there will be English subtitles to help you. And if anyone's watching who's new here and you haven't subscribed yet, click the red subscribe button. And if you want to give me a thumbs up, I'm going to do a few questions here. Susanna says, hi Bob, how are you? I'm in Hungary and it's 32 degrees here today. We have a warm summer. Everyone can't wait for summer to pass. What is the highest degrees in Canada? So 32 would be warm. We would be in a heat wave. A heat wave is when we have more than one day where it's over 30 degrees. The highest it gets in Canada is about 36 or 37 degrees Celsius. But we like the month of August. It's August now because the nighttime temperatures in August start to go down. So it's very warm during the day, but it's a bit cooler at night. So the end of July, the month of July, that is usually when we have some really hot weather. And now we are in the month of August. It will start to cool down at night, and towards the end of August, our daytime temperatures will cool off a little bit as well. Next question is from Chisrazan, says from India, what is the difference between a tornado, cyclone, and storm? So a tornado is, again, the spinning funnel. A cyclone is the name for a hurricane or typhoon, which is a storm that forms on the ocean and hits land. And a storm is just any time the weather is bad and it's cloudy and rainy and windy. So storm is a very general term. Let's see here. Miriam says, hey Bob, I just enjoyed the live. Thanks, Miriam. I would like to know what's it like in November in Canada. My husband and I are going there for vacation. Oh, thanks, Lolly. Thanks for the super chat. That's very awesome of you. Lolly just gave me a little bit of money, which I can use to buy a coffee later today. Thank you so much, Lolly. That's awesome for the super chat. What's it like in November? So it can be very chilly in November, but it's not quite winter. So in November, you can expect temperatures between, it might be -2 Celsius, it might be 11 degrees Celsius. It could be as high as 15 degrees Celsius if it's a nice day. But in November, generally, you can sense that winter is coming. So it will be quite chilly in the mornings, and it might be, you might have a few nice days. Bring a jacket, and if you're from a warmer country, bring a winter coat. So this question is a good one. Sylvia says, what can you do on the flower farm in the winter? Are there some plants growing in greenhouses too? So in the winter, we just rest. So in the winter in Canada, most farmers don't grow anything. All of the crops in Canada, by the end of November, almost all of the crops have been harvested. Flowers, corn, grain, wheat, everything has been harvested by November. And then farmers just relax in the winter. If they have animals, if they have cows, if they have sheep, if they have goats, they will feed hay to their animals in the winter. But generally there are no crops in the winter. And then we actually have small greenhouses. Greenhouses are covered in plastic or glass. And we do start some plants around February, March, we start growing things again. So in the winter, it's time for Canadians to relax. That's what we do in the winter. Let's see here. Sergey says, hi Bob, thank you for your videos. Is there hail where you live? Yes, there is hail. Not very often, but we do get hail. Let's see here. Oh, let's do this. So Locke says, hi Bob, could you tell me the difference between harsh sunlight and hard sunlight? So we don't usually say hard sunlight. Thanks Leo Benavides. Thanks for the class today, Mr. Bob, says Leo. Thank you very much. I should go back and check. Lolly said, thank you, teacher, with her super chat. Thanks, Lolly. And Leo Benavides says, thank you. Thanks for this class today, Mr. Bob. You're welcome, Leo. So again, the question was, we would use harsh sunlight. So when there's no clouds and the sun is very, very bright, we would say harsh sunlight. It's very difficult to take pictures, nice pictures outside when there's harsh sunlight. Let's see here. Oh, here's a good question. I forgot about this one. Saeed says, who's the weatherman? So on TV, when you watch the news, there is a segment where there is a weather person. So a person who has studied weather. They're usually a meteorologist, or they work as a weather person on TV, and they will give you the weather forecast when you watch the news. So that's who the weather person is. Anyways, folks, I'm going to wrap up this lesson. I know some of you have other things to do today. I'm Bob the Canadian. If you haven't subscribed, please click that red button below. Give me a thumbs up. Don't forget, this video will have subtitles at the bottom tomorrow. You just need to click the CC button tomorrow for subtitles on this video. If there were parts you didn't quite understand, that will allow you to see the English subtitles, and maybe you can translate them a little bit to get that. Lin says, I wonder, how do you use the super chat? Lin, there's a little $sign in your, if it works in your country, there's a little $sign at the bottom that lets you use the super chat. Again, Bob the Canadian appreciates super chats, but I do not expect them. You don't have to do super chats. Anyways, thank you to every one of you for watching. This was a great live lesson on the weather. Don't forget to have a good weekend. Spend some time with friends, spend some time with family, maybe just spend some time with yourself relaxing, spend some time learning English. That would be great as well. I'm Bob the Canadian. It was really, really fun to do this lesson with you. I hope you have a great day.